All right, now let's discuss this further with Greg Simons in Uppsala, Sweden. He's an associate professor at the Institute for Russian and Eurasian Studies at Uppsala University. Thank you very much, Professor Simons, for joining us here on TRT World. I want to begin this by asking you about the helicopter crash that happened in Kiev. Now, I understand it is still too early to speculate the cause, but we are not talking about a normal crash here. We're talking about a country which is perhaps facing one of its most brutal wars in decades. So tell me, how likely do you think is it for this crash to be a sabotage?
Well, okay, you can have technical problems, technical faults. I mean, those are reasonably old style of helicopter. But sabotage, I have not heard. But one of the rumours which has been circulating is the fact that possibility that Ukrainian anti-air defences shot it down. And this is plausible, given that you have a lot of raids and so forth. They'll be on high alert. And if there is a poor communication between the political side here, the Interior Minister, and the military, especially the air defence, this is possible. But as you say, I mean, this is the very early stages, so you're going to have different rumours and so forth swirling around, because, I mean, this one's got a lot of high political stakes, considering who's been killed.
Indeed, and we hope we'll be learning more about the crash in the coming hours and days. Now, Professor, Sergey Lavrov gave a very, very important speech today in which he basically blamed this whole war in Ukraine on the West and, more importantly, the United States.
Yes, I mean, he drew historical parallels as well between the grand strategy, if you like, of Napoleon and the grand strategy of Nazi Germany in gathering different European states to act against Russia. So, I mean, this would fit in. You have some hints, because if we look in 2019, Rand issued a report, which is openly available, about how to impose cost-inducing measures against Russia. So, I mean, this is looking at geopolitics and geoeconomics. So, against specific countries such as Belarus, Central Asia, but they do also mention Ukraine. And, of course, this is some years before the actual conflict. So, I mean, how much is there? Certainly it would fit with the US strategy if we look at Brzezinski and his geostrategic imperatives. But once more, I mean, no country is going to openly admit that they are waging an indirect and a very, I would say, potentially risky war such as this one.
Professor, correct me if I'm wrong. For any conflict to end, for a political settlement to take place, there has to be a willingness from both sides. Now, when I see this latest statement made by the Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov, I feel that from the Russian side, there is little to no will when it comes to de-escalating tensions in Ukraine through diplomacy.
Not quite. I mean, from what my reading of the situation is that Ukraine has no agency. And I mean, this is referring to, of course, the peace talks mediated by Turkey, which Russia and Ukraine seem to be coming to a deal, but then we have the intervention of Boris Johnson, the then British Prime Minister, and those talks came to nothing. So what I think he says, and this comes in his other statements, that it's not Ukraine making the decisions, but the United States. And if the United States had some, to use their lexicon, reasonable terms, that is amenable to Russia's geostrategic interests, then they would consider diplomacy.
Professor Greg Simons, thank you very much for talking to us here on TRT World. Really appreciate your taking out the time.